Mientras vamos, se van
While
acomodando.
we get them to sit down, let us analyze and think of what resonated most in us. Let's decant a bit. It's very difficult. It's been so much and so deep and so moving. So it's not easy, is it? Well, let's go on now to a Q&A session. Questions for the three persons who spoke from their souls and told us about their experiences. And, well, please go ahead. Time to ask your questions.
Un momentito por el micrófono, nada más.
Yes, do use the microphone, remember.
Sí, buenos días. Bueno, yo quería hacer una pregunta.
Thank you. I have a question, but about something Javier announced and didn't say, which, you know, after completing the exercises, after the contemplation, there were 4 possibilities, and he only mentioned 3 and not the 4th. So my question has to do with the 4th, and I wanted to see whether before asking, maybe, I don't know, could we get him to complete what he didn't say?
Perfecto, porque empalma.
Well, perfect, because it links up directly with the 3 presentations. The 4th point was that a possibility of the exercises is a synthesis of different elements, but one has to know very well the synthesis that one goes for. Yeah, and this is such a perfect example. So a possible derivation of the exercises is to integrate elements of different cultures, but integrate them very well. And for that, you have to really know a lot about the 2 worlds that you are integrating, as is what they've been telling us. So is this 4th part clear? Great.
Gracias. Y formulo entonces la pregunta.
Yeah, well, then let me ask the question on the basis of what you said now, Javier. There is an annotation in the diary of a German Jesuit living a long time with in Japan. The question is for Karin. Yes, Karin, please. And in Omila Lasalle, in an annotation in his diary, says that he lived Ignatian spirituality as a line, and the Zen he lived as another line, and they were both parallel and never got to touch each other. But he says that as life went on, the 2 parallel lines eventually became one single line. He says, I don't know how or why, and possibly people won't believe it, but this happened to me. So we live contemplation exercises, the Franz Jallis methodology, or more Ignatian or classical exercises, but would it be worth our while maybe to find a way that would unite one and the other? That is, Ignatian exercises in the classical sense, make memory, will, understanding to work together, also evocation of images, yeah, analysis of emotion, you know, mental, intellectual, emotional. Whereas in Franz Jallis' proposal, the idea is more for repose, because it leads to this inner depth. So my question for you, Karen, would be, maybe wouldn't it be worth our while to explore an intermediate way? For example, to start every exercise from the Ignatian methodology, but then go descending towards the depth, the more intimate depth of the retreatant in full silence. I don't think this has been very explored. Maybe, yes, the Japanese Jesuit explored this somewhat, but what do you think? What do you think? I mean, could this way be explored in the sense of what Javier was saying a moment ago, yeah? This union of 2 ways, yeah? So that they can offer a very, very deep experience to the retreatant. Sorry if the question was very long. Thank you.
What I can say, one cannot say for all it should be like this. It is always the longing which prepares the retreatant, in which way he opens up to God, and whether he's in silence or whether he is touched by a word or by an image. It is all which leads us closer to ourselves and to God, and that is precious. So I wouldn't say we should start with a certain with silence and then continue. I don't know, is it your answer? Not fully, but maybe.
Bien, gracias. ¿Tenemos alguna otra pregunta? Adelante, gracias. Nora.
Thank you. More questions. Please go ahead. Thank you. Thank you very much for all the presentations. There is something that I have coming from the first day, the second, now listening to Javier, and then you all, how discernment, the Ignatian spiritual discernment is gradually happening in all these processes that we are hearing about. So who wants to answer? Starting by Javier or any of you. What about the discernment?
Yeah, this answer I have now clearly understood. This is a discernment in contemplative prayer is very simple. And there are two questions where the retreatant can clearly recognize in which direction he is following. The first question is where I am with my attention. Am I turned to the present through the concrete perception by my hands, or am and by the name of Jesus, or am I busy with my thoughts? And the second question is, am I ready really to receive in God's name what shows up in myself, or am I not? And this is the whole discernment in this way in this contemplative way.
Si alguno otro, Malú o Vicos, quieren contestar, ¿cómo se daría el discernimiento?
Malú, Vicos, would you like to answer about how would discernment happen in the case of the Maya peoples? I was saying they have their own way of discerning. Saint Ignatius suggests one way, but these original peoples have their own form of discernment, and that fits in perfectly well in the way in which Ignatius presents it. I was saying that the Maya peoples have a pre-Ignatian way of discerning, and it's not old or new gospel. No, Old Testament, New Testament, it's not that. No, I can hear myself. When Francis writes the Laudato Si, the indigenous peoples said, finally, at last, they are saying something we knew already. What Francis is saying, we have been told by our grandparents. And the Maya peoples, in my case, say exactly the same about Ignatian discernment or about the spiritual exercises. They say, we knew this. We had been told this by our grandparents. We knew this already. So what we are doing is recovering through the Ignatian proposal and the exercises. We are recovering our own way of discerning, the way in which we encounter our Creator, because that is the aim, really, at the end of the day, isn't it? To assume God's project from whatever cosmovision it might be. Ignatius proposes this way that for them fits very well. And what's that way of ours? Somebody asked without a microphone. You mean the Maya way? Well, in the Maya way, Honoher Ohuinach, meaning we all are people, we all are persons. And as I said at the beginning, all things are part of myself and I am part of all creation. And then the way the Maya world is for me to go back to be part of that creation. And the Nahual, the calendar, well, gives the method. Yes, the calendar, the Nahual gives the elements to do so. As I said, it's an imperative. Remember, it means get up, start, move, walk, talk. And then not only am I told off, not only am I told, you know, please get up and go, but they also give me the tenderness, the gift, the grace to do so. Yeah, so I take this and your grace suffices. But I have to say it, yes, I mean, there's a commitment, yeah? And this is what this method does of the Maya discernment. Yeah, I would like to answer by saying that yesterday, to connect what we've been talking about today with yesterday, we talked so much about the figure of the director, yes, of the one directing. And this person has an important role to go from the text, from culture, to the person who gives. So it really depends very much on who is in front of me and who is going to be presenting to me the rules of discernment. For example, here I can remember a simple example. I like the rules of the second week a lot. Really, for me, the rules are a way to involve God in a process of decision, to involve God at the beginning and maybe during and at the end, but I don't know whether God appears per se throughout the process. So for young people, yeah, recently I've had a retreat with young people and I presented the rules of the second week. And well, then I invited the young people to open their eyes to see the situation, the real situation, and to discern their present and their presence in that situation, and to know how to identify deceptions. Yeah, with the, well, how through nature or form you can change or appear in one way or another. So then young people in society look beyond their own daily context and they dream something else, but they don't always commit directly to what is there. And for me, it's a way of presenting the rules of the second week without talking about consolation, desolation, you know, how consolation, desolation work in the second week, but rather how to become involved, to place yourself within that context and see the enemy in the scenarios of society. Yeah, only to close, or at least to establish a connection with the three of you about this. It would seem that Malulu talks about the director or the helping make the discernment. Yeah, then we would say that the Nahual of the Maya also helps as a director for discernment. And in contemplative prayer, it would be the person guiding in that contemplative prayer will also help as an accompaniment to discernment, right?
The retreatant himself can see it at every moment, where whether he is directed towards God or whether he is circling around himself. He himself can discern it at every moment when he is honest with himself.
Thank you. Muy bien, gracias. ¿Tendríamos alguna otra pregunta? Adelante, gracias.
Thank you. Any more questions? Go ahead, please.
It's a question, I think, for Malulu, also maybe for you, Toyano. My counterpart, you know, Orobator he's the president of the Africa Madagascar conference. His perspective is very strong to say that, in fact, so when the people from the West came, for example, to Africa, they came with the idea that the religions in Africa were not really religions. There was animist and so forth. And his idea is to say, no, there are real religions. And in fact, we didn't yet learn how to listen to them and how they could influence and have an impact on Christianism. So we always think that it's first us coming with Christianism, who, bringing the good news. And he says that still there is a big work to be done. So really, Christianism could be influenced really and deeply by the African religions. So how do you see that? How do you think about that? And do you think that also, in some ways, spiritual exercises could be really influenced by African religions and maybe by Maya religion?
I agree with, soy de acuerdo con Orobator.
I do agree with Roberto, yeah, because this is the history, isn't it? We're quoting history. And history has facts, things that happen, you can't change it. I mean, the missionaries got there to go for the tabula rasa. Even nowadays, I mean, today I talked about the paradigm, yes, of that traditional initiation. So before traveling to present my speech here, I had a dialogue with a sister, a religious nun in Spain, and she said to me, she's an elderly lady, but she said that she had worked in a mission in Congo, yeah, and she said to me that in her times with the missionary, with the European missionary there, one that had undergone traditional initiation before communion had to confess, because he considered it wasn't good to do communion without confession. So here, talking about, you know, initiation as a cultural element that has as a, you know, a cultural nucleus that has many elements and can help even receive, you know, Christianity, or even enlighten Christianity. I mean, that is a central element, isn't it? I can't add more. Interesting. Vico, yes. Could you connect me, please, to the screen? I'm just going to tell you an anecdote that might give an answer. Yeah, further. No, keep going. Where do I have it? The part of liturgy, so to speak, yeah, in Christian terminology, the liturgy of the Maya, is to have a ceremony in the mountain or in the home with a very ornamented altar full of candles, flowers, many elements that respond to their cosmovision, the way they see the world. And towards 1992, the 500th anniversary of the evangelization, or what people call the discovery of America, well, everybody was wondering whether one had to celebrate something or not. And we went to a mountain, because the grandparents organized this and called us all for this ceremony. And during the ceremony, Yes, there are beautiful altars made of flowers, as we saw, didn't we, with the Amazonian practice. And in one of these ceremonies, an elderly lady, I mean, we were co-celebrating, yeah? She in the Maya spirituality, and I was celebrating Eucharist on the same altar, yeah? As you can see with the fire. And in the moment of putting the wine in the chalice, and I put the wine, but I had quite a lot of wine left over, so I put it into the fire as they usually do. As well, they kind of put their their liquor they put in the fire as part of the offering, and I put the wine, and I felt so happy. I thought, I'm enculturated. I'm doing what they do. And then when we finished giving communion, and then, well, quite a lot of wine was left over in the chalice, and I said, well, I'll put it into the fire. And then I did, you know, I kind of did so, and in a second I got the image of, and if people are scandalized and they say to the provincial father, look what he said, and I'm kicked out of the order, and I thought, no, oh my Lord, I had it all, drank it all, and I was not very happy, a bit kind of bothered. And when we were going back, this old lady got next to me and she said, why are you so fucked up? Those were her words. And I said to her, I explained the reason why. And she said to me, she said, but what's the problem? And I said, I was going to put it in the fire and I didn't do so. So I had to drink it. I was a coward. I was afraid. I was scared. And then she said to me, and I said, what would you have done? I asked her, and she used the word in Quiche. She said, I would have offered it. I would have made an offering. I would have put it in the fire. I was going to do so. Why? Well, because for me it was, you know, I don't know what was dirty, what was left over, you know, dust and ashes, and I don't know. And this lovely lady said, I would have made an offering. And I thought, of course, we are in two contexts. For me, the soil, the ash, the fire is what is dirty. And for her, it's the maternal side of God. You know, it's Mother Earth. It's this maternal side of God. So it's God's presence. And I was even angrier, okay, even more fucked up, excuse my language. And so then when we went on and she said, you still fucked up, aren't you? I said, yes, I am a lot. And then I said, why would you have offered it? Why, you know, why offer that, you know, sacramental wine that's the blood of Christ? And she said, my father, don't you say that the blood of Jesus was put on earth for our salvation? And then I was totally kind of overwhelmed, and I said, oh my goodness, why read so many books? I mean, close the books and start being wise. I've got to start learning theology right here with this lady. That was, for me, like this, I don't know, being born again, you know, to this face of God that I had made evil. I had made it negative, and that wasn't the case at all. So it meant, you know, not even a dialogue, to let myself be spoken to, because truly sometimes we talk about, you know, intercultural dialogue, and in fact what we are indicating is that I have the truth and I want to impose it upon others, and it's not intercultural dialogue at all. So better listen. And I mean, in Ignatius, the exercises are to listen to the voice of God. If God is present in all cultures, I have to make sure that I let my ears listen to the voice of God through them too. Although it's not what people think should be done. My word, yes, well, so much we have to listen. Any further questions? I did see a hand. Yes, please go ahead.
Sí. Yo he estado 3 veces en
I was 3 times in a retreat with Chris, and I really practiced Franz Jalik's modality. I was really happy to do so. And also I've been in Chiapas, so I've, you know, with the Maya style. And I want to highlight this practice of such good experiences. Yeah. And I think that both the retreat in the Jalis modality can really contribute a lot and bring a lot to us in our society. And also the Maya culture can help us better understand creation and nature. So in practical terms, concerning the experience of these exercises done this way, the result obtained is very, very good indeed. What I'm searching is a kind of theory integrating the different cultures. So Father Javier Veloni talks about integrating. Then we heard about, you know, the two-line standpoint that at the end become one single line. There are beautiful words, very affirmative, describing this kind of processes. I don't, unfortunately, know so much about the African cosmovision. I wish I did. But inculturation is a nice affirmative idea and affirmation as well. Mixture or mix might be more natural. My dramatic question, and out of affection, okay, I'm not trying to be offensive, but my question, my dramatic question is, why isn't this syncretism? Why isn't this all syncretic? Please, I'm not saying it to destroy or criticize, but we know that both Franz Jalis's method and some aspects of Maya Amazonian integration with Western ideas is rather controversial in other environments out of our conference here, right? So why isn't this syncretism? Why? What you have presented today?
Ya lo dijiste tú.
Well, you said it yourself, because it's the heart. It's about the heart. So what I think is that, you know, the heart and affection are here just to fall in love. And in a marriage, in a couple, in people in love, you don't see the separation any longer, do you? It's both together. They are intimately linked to each other. There is a fusion, a merging together. So I think that's why I was saying not so much talk about interreligious dialogue, but rather listening, interreligious listening. So let's listen to them. We've been more than 500 years telling them who is God and what God is like. So they have their own vision of God. And I think it would be very good for us Christians to learn as well from the way in which they see and understand God and how they relate to God and how they relate to nature in the Amazon, because it's the face of God and they have preserved it. So to learn from them is something that is going to save us all as humankind, as I said at the beginning. So it's not really right now, I think, really to say whether this is syncretism or not, or is it dialogue or not, or is it inculturation or not, but rather it's the historical important moment we have now to save humanity. And so we cannot right now start having, you know, the ill person in bed and thinking, what do we do? No, 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 no. We have to act now for yesterday, really.
May I allow something? It's not only syncretism or the negative standpoint, because syncretism is too negative, too anthropocentric. And we are at the experiential level, so there is not someone, you know, that goes on his or her own. There are connections about people's spiritualities, intuitions. There are links, there are connections. Thank you.
Bueno, wow. Y una a Cristóbal, adelante.
Cristóbal, you wanted to ask something? We have time for one more question. I would like to thank again to the three of you, your presentations, and in particular to Malulu, I would like to make a comment. Something that, you know, really awakes in my shepherd heart, because you were talking about the initiation right in the African world from youth to adult life. And I think that in the spiritual exercises, I mean, they are given to young people mainly on that stage of life, often as part of what we call in the Christian religion, you know, the pathway to the sacrament of confirmation. But we have many people that are confirmed, but not initiated in the relationship with God, with Christ. So your presentation, you know, awaken a lot of ideas, because maybe the spiritual exercises could be for the church and in many contexts, not only the African one, also in the Western world, in which young people are very secularized. It's just as another culture. I think that the percentage of Christian families that feel that have not been able to give to their children or grandchildren the essential of their religious experience is huge. There is, you know, a huge frustration in grandparents, fathers, mothers, parents in general, that their children do not believe in Jesus as they did. So if you, in the analysis, if the work that you've done, you can see signs that can be even more universal than what you exposed or presented to us, so that the youth or new generations can really get initiated in the knowledge of Christ through these spiritual exercises. That would be great for us. Well, maybe the concern, the background concern is that one can also know his or her own personal history, the history that is writing in present time with values. Because if we talk about faith, we are, you know, conveying the faith, the Christian faith, from grandparents to parents to children, grandchildren, and that more or less works. But I think that it's important to know what it means to have the eye to receive the faith. And to that, in our case, we had to reach adults that were able to transform the social reality. And that's the great paradigm, you know, to taking into account solidarity and conveying present time values, history. And that's what I had really in the background of my mind. Well, no doubt today we are left with a lot of food for thought, and we are very deeply moved. So thank you to the three of you. Thank you for your presentations. Thank you, Javier, for these great, marvelous presentations. And before saying goodbye now, Javier has, you know, some logistic issues, aspects to comment on.
Una muy breve intervención.
Very briefly, Frederick, I would like to comment about your question. Why this is not syncretism, or how to make a difference between syncretism and integration? I think that there is a simple answer, which is not maybe easy to discern, but immediate to the heart. pointing directly to the heart. In a syncretism, there is a degradation of the elements that are at stake. When we join them, they mix and degrade. In an integration, both just higher up, just elevate. We're sorry, but there was a comment on the room, but it was not done on the mic, so we could not hear. Well, now for the groups, for the personal work, and to be able to share with the groups, and then take to the assembly at the end of the day. We would have now two questions to be shared with the resonance. Of course, I mean, we keep on sharing the resonance, and I think it's important for the group to understand how everyone has lived the different interventions. So that would be for the first round. But for the second round, there would be two questions. And they are return questions, two ways. The one-way questions. The first question would be, what characteristics should I pinpoint or is key for me so that an initiatic journey can be considered to be Ignatian? So what's the key aspect that I would like to underline in order to consider that an initiatic journey in a spiritual proposal can be considered to be Ignatian? Is the question clear? Okay, should I repeat it once more? So what characteristics should I underline or pinpoint in order to consider that an initiatic journey is Ignatian? Okay, great, good. So that's the first question, one-way question, but then we have, you know, a return question or a second-way question. Which is the characteristic that I can welcome out of the many characteristics that have been mentioned? Which is the one that I would take to enrich the Ignatian journey? So what characteristic we can welcome the most in order to enrich the Ignatian exercises? So the first is, let's say, one way in order to know what's the Ignatian touch, which something which cannot be discussed. So that's the one way. And then the return way is, how can we enrich ourselves, because we are not masters of everything. Is this clear? I hope that interpreters will manage to convey this idea, and I apologize to the interpreters. Thank you for conveying the messages. Is everything clear for everyone? No, it's not clear. Okay, excuse me, interpreters, because I will repeat again, because I think it's important to make things clear. Okay, so I shall repeat. There are two questions, a one-way question and a return question, or a first and a second question, if you wish. Okay, it's important to understand that movement. So the one-way or first question is, which is the element aspect for us to consider the journey to be Ignatian? So that's the first one, okay? But then there is a return question. So when we have met the different person, something happens. What do we receive? So what is the element that is in contact with another tradition that we can welcome ourselves in order to enrich the Ignatian spiritual exercises? Yes, is that a little bit more clear? Okay, thank you. Thank you to all of you for this dialogue, and of course, to all participants that are with us online. And we invite them to be with us again in the last day of the symposium. So thank you. Thank you to all of you.